Someone doesn't invite you. What do? You start wondering, why didn't they invite me? Did I do something wrong? Should I message them? Someone you care about becomes distant. So you chase them. You ask what happened. You try harder. You explain yourself. You desperately want things to return to the way they were. Someone criticizes you, and you spend the rest of the day trying to prove that their opinion of you is wrong. Someone doesn't like you, and somehow their opinion becomes your problem. Think about how much energy we spend trying to control things that belong to other people. Their decisions, their feelings, their opinions, their reactions, their behavior. We want people to understand us, choose us, respect us, include us, agree with us, stay with us. And when they don't, we often try to change them. But what if there were another response? Two surprisingly simple words. Let them. They don't invite you? Let them. They want to judge you? Let them. They disagree with your decision? Let them. They choose to walk away, as painful as that may be? Let them. At first, this idea can sound almost too simple, maybe even careless. Does let them mean you should stop caring about people? Should you ignore every problem? Should you allow people to treat you badly? No. That's where the idea becomes much more interesting, because let them is only one side of the equation. There's another powerful phrase, let me. Let them have their opinion. Let me decide whether that opinion deserves my energy. Let them make their choice. Let me choose how I respond. Let them live their life. Let me take responsibility for mine. And that shift, from trying to control them to taking responsibility for me, is at the heart of the let them theory. Hello, my amazing students. My name is Sarah, and today we're going to learn English through the ideas in the Let Them theory by Mel Robbins. This book explores something almost everyone struggles with: spending too much emotional energy on things we cannot control. Other people's opinions, other people's choices, other people's moods, other people's expectations, and especially other people's reactions to us. Throughout today's episode, we're going to explore how the let them and let me ideas can help us think differently about relationships, rejection, friendships, approval, boundaries, and our own emotional energy. And while we do that, you'll naturally improve your English listening, learn useful vocabulary and expressions, and hear practical English you can actually use in everyday conversations. We'll explore the book through 5 chapters. Chapter number 1, the 2 words that change everything. Let them. We'll understand why trying to manage everyone around us creates so much unnecessary stress. Chapter number 2, stop trying to control other people. We'll explore the difference between influence and control, and why accepting that difference can be incredibly freeing. Chapter number 3, let me, the other half of the theory. This is where the idea becomes active. Instead of focusing only on what other people are doing, we'll bring our attention back to our own choices. Chapter number 4, relationships, rejection, and other people's opinions. We'll apply the ideas to situations that actually hurt: being excluded, being rejected, losing friendships, receiving criticism, and realizing that someone may simply not choose you. And finally, chapter number 5, take your power back and focus on your own life. We'll bring everything together and understand what it means to protect your energy without becoming cold, to create boundaries without trying to control people, and to accept reality without giving up your ability to act. Because maybe peace doesn't come from finally getting everyone to behave the way you want. Maybe it begins when you realize they're allowed to make their choices, and so are you. Let's begin with chapter number 1, the 2 words that change everything. Let them. Chapter number 1, the 2 words that change everything. Let them. Imagine this. It's Saturday evening. You open Instagram, and suddenly you see a photo. Several of your friends are together. They're laughing, having dinner, enjoying themselves, and you weren't invited. Immediately, Your mind starts working. Why didn't they invite me? Are they angry with me? Maybe they don't like me anymore. You look at the photo again. Then again. Maybe you check who is there. Maybe you think about sending someone a message, and before you realize it, something that happened without you has taken control of your entire evening. This is exactly the kind of moment where the idea behind the let them theory becomes useful. Instead of chasing an explanation, trying to control the situation, or desperately trying to change what other people decided, you say, let them. Let them go to dinner without you. It doesn't mean you shouldn't care about your friendships. And it certainly doesn't mean you should accept disrespect. It means recognizing one simple fact. Their decision has already been made. Now you get to decide what you're going to do with your energy. This sounds simple, but it's difficult because humans naturally want control. We like knowing why things happen. We want people to behave in ways that make us feel safe. If someone we love becomes distant, we want to bring them closer. If someone misunderstands us, we want to explain ourselves until they finally understand. If someone dislikes us, we may secretly want to convince them that we're actually wonderful. But there's a problem. You cannot enter another person's mind and control what happens there. You can communicate, you can apologize, you can explain, you can influence, but ultimately, other people still get to make their own choices, and fighting against that reality can become exhausting. Think about another situation. You tell your family that you're starting a new business. You're excited, but someone says, that's a terrible idea. Now you have two battles. The first is the actual challenge of building your business. The second is trying to make that person believe in you. Which battle deserves your energy? Maybe they think you'll fail. Let them. Maybe they don't understand your dream. Let them. Their opinion doesn't automatically have to become your decision. This is where the phrase becomes powerful. Let them creates a small psychological distance between what someone else does and what you do next. Instead of immediately reacting, you observe. Someone is being distant? Notice it. Someone constantly cancels plans? Notice it. Someone only contacts you when they need something? Notice it. Sometimes people's behavior gives you useful information, and when you're constantly trying to change that behavior, you may miss what it's telling you. If someone repeatedly shows that they don't value your time, perhaps the answer isn't to become better at convincing them. Perhaps the answer is to believe the information you're receiving. But we also need an important distinction. Let them doesn't mean never communicate. Healthy relationships require conversations. If your close friend does something that hurts you, you can tell them. If your partner repeatedly crosses an important boundary, you should address it. If someone mistreats you, you don't have to quietly tolerate it. The idea isn't, people can do whatever they want to me. It's, I cannot control their choices, but I can control my response. That's completely different. And once you understand that, something begins to change. You stop spending quite so much energy trying to manage everyone around you. You start observing more clearly, and perhaps most importantly, you begin asking a better question. Not, how do I make them change? But, given what they're choosing to do, what am I going to choose? That question takes us directly into the next chapter. Because one of the most exhausting habits in life is trying to control people who are never yours to control in the first place. Chapter number 2. Stop trying to control other people. Think about someone in your life you've desperately wanted to change. Maybe a friend who never replies on time. A partner who doesn't communicate the way you want. A family member who keeps criticizing your decisions. A coworker who constantly complains. You explain. You argue. You give advice. You become frustrated. And eventually you think, why can't they just understand? Here's the uncomfortable answer. Maybe they understand perfectly. They simply aren't choosing what you want them to choose. And that's where we need to understand the difference between influence and control. You can influence people. You can express your feelings, give advice, set an example, ask for something, explain what you need. But influence ends where another person's freedom begins. You cannot force someone to care. You cannot force someone to change. You cannot force someone to apologize sincerely. You cannot force someone to become emotionally available. And you definitely cannot force someone to become the person you imagine they could be. This is where so much unnecessary stress begins. We create a picture in our minds of how someone should behave, and then become angry when reality doesn't match the picture. Imagine your friend is always late. Every time you meet, you wait 30 minutes. You complain. They apologize. Next week, they're late again. After months of this, you might still be thinking, how do I make them become punctual? But perhaps that's the wrong question. Try this instead. If this person continues being late, what can I do? Now you're focusing on something you actually control. Maybe you stop waiting longer than 15 minutes. Maybe you meet somewhere where waiting isn't inconvenient. Maybe you tell them clearly, if you're more than 20 minutes late, I'll leave. Notice the difference. You're saying, you can make your choice and I'll make mine. That's a boundary. And boundaries are often misunderstood. A boundary isn't a tool for controlling another person. It's a decision about your own behavior. You cannot say, you're not allowed to criticize me. You can't physically control what someone says. But you can say, if this conversation becomes disrespectful, I'm going to leave. Now you're controlling your own participation. This shift can be incredibly freeing, because controlling other people requires endless energy. You have to monitor them, correct them, convince them, react to them. But when you accept that adults are responsible for their own choices, you can redirect that energy toward your own life. There's another place where control appears constantly: other people's opinions. Imagine you post something online. 20 people love it. One person writes, "This is terrible." Which comment stays in your mind? Probably the negative one. Now you want to respond. Explain yourself. Prove them wrong. Maybe you even change what you're doing because one stranger disapproves. But think about what just happened. You handed someone else control over your emotional state. What if instead you thought, they don't like it, let them. Not everyone will understand you. Not everyone will agree with you. Not everyone will like your personality, your career, your clothes, your relationship, or the way you choose to live. And trying to create a life that nobody criticizes is impossible. Even if you do everything right, someone can still disagree. So the goal cannot be controlling everyone's opinion. The goal is becoming clear about whose opinions deserve influence in your life. That's different. If someone you deeply trust gives you thoughtful criticism, listen. If your boss gives you useful feedback about your work, consider it. Let them isn't an excuse to reject every uncomfortable opinion. Sometimes criticism contains information we need. The question is this feedback useful, or am I simply desperate for approval? That's a powerful distinction. And perhaps the hardest place to practice this idea is in relationships. Sometimes we see someone's potential. We think, if they would just change this one thing, everything would be perfect. But you aren't in a relationship with someone's potential. You're dealing with who they are right now. You can communicate what you need. You can invite change. But ultimately, they decide whether they want to change. Let them, and then look at reality. What are they actually showing you? What are you willing to accept? What do you need? What choice can you make? Notice how the focus is beginning to shift. Them becomes me. And that's where the let them theory becomes much more than simply allowing people to do whatever they want. Because let them is only half of the idea. The other half may be even more important. Chapter number 3. Let me, the other half of the theory. There is a danger in hearing the words let them and stopping there. Someone ignores you? Let them. Someone doesn't support you? Let them. Someone walks away? Let them. Okay, But then what? Do you simply sit there and allow life to happen around you? No. This is where the second half of the idea becomes essential. Let me. Let them is about recognizing what belongs to other people. Let me brings your attention back to what belongs to you. Imagine you've applied for a job you really want. You prepare carefully. You complete the interview. And a few days later, you receive an email. They chose someone else. Your first reaction might be, why didn't they choose me? You replay the interview. Maybe you become angry. Maybe you start questioning yourself. But you cannot control their decision. So, let them choose someone else. Then comes the important part. Let me decide what I do next. Let me ask for feedback. Let me improve my interview skills. Let me apply somewhere else. Let me remind myself that one rejection doesn't define my ability. Now you're moving again. That's the difference between acceptance and helplessness. Acceptance says, this happened. I cannot change that fact. Helplessness says, this happened, so there's nothing I can do. Those aren't the same thing. You may not control what happened, but you often have some control over what happens next. Let's take relationships. Imagine someone you like doesn't want the same relationship you want. You could spend months trying to convince them. You could send more messages, become more available, try to become exactly what you think they want. But their feelings belong to them. Let them. Then, let me stop chasing someone who isn't choosing me. Let me protect my dignity. Let me feel disappointed without allowing that disappointment to define my future. Let me invest my energy in people who actually want to be in my life. Notice how much more active that is. Let me returns your agency. Agency means your ability to make choices and take action in your own life. And this becomes especially powerful when dealing with other people's opinions. Suppose you're thinking about changing careers. Your family doesn't understand. One friend tells you you're making a huge mistake. Another person laughs at your idea. You can't force them to believe in you. Let them doubt you. But then, let me research carefully. Let me decide whether this risk makes sense. Let me prepare financially. Let me build the skills I need. Let me take responsibility for the consequences. Now you're not rebelling simply because someone disagreed with you. You're thinking independently. That's important. Let me doesn't mean I'll do whatever I want and ignore everyone. Sometimes other people see things we don't. Constructive criticism matters. The goal isn't to become defensive. The goal is to understand where your responsibility begins. You listen, you consider, and then you choose. There's also a beautiful simplicity to using these two ideas together. Your friend cancels your plans again? Let them. Let me decide whether I continue making plans with them. Someone criticizes your appearance? Let them. Let me decide whether their opinion deserves space in my mind. Someone succeeds before you? Let them. Let me use their success as evidence that something is possible, instead of turning it into a reason to hate my own progress. Someone doesn't text back? Let them. Let me put my phone down and continue living my day. That last example sounds small, but think about how often we surrender an entire afternoon to someone else's behavior. We wait, check, refresh, analyze. Why did they read the message but not respond? What does that emoji mean? Should I send another message? Suddenly, another person's phone controls your mood. Let me interrupts that pattern. Let me go outside. Let me work. Let me call someone I love. Let me return my attention to my own life. And that's perhaps the deepest shift in this entire idea. Your attention is valuable. Where you repeatedly place it, your emotional energy follows. If all your attention goes toward controlling other people, you have less energy for your health, your goals, your relationships, your work, your learning, and your own happiness. Let them releases what isn't yours to control. Let me reminds you not to abandon what is yours. And this becomes especially difficult when emotions are involved. Because it's one thing to say, let them, when a stranger criticizes you. It's much harder when someone you love rejects you, excludes you, disappoints you, or decides to leave. That's where we're going next. Chapter number 4. Relationships, rejection, and other people's opinions. Relationships are probably where let them becomes hardest to practice. Because when you care about someone, you don't want to simply let them go. You want answers. You want explanations. You want another chance. Imagine someone you've been dating suddenly becomes distant. Their messages become shorter. They stop making plans. You can feel that something has changed. So what do? You try harder. You send another message. You become more available. You analyze every conversation. You ask yourself, what can I do to make them interested again? But here's the difficult question. Why are you trying so hard to convince someone to choose you? If they want distance, let them have distance. Let them. Not because you don't care, not because rejection doesn't hurt, but because another person's lack of interest is information. We spend so much time fighting the information that we never accept what it's telling us. The same thing happens with friendships. Maybe you're always the person who sends the first message. You organize every meeting. You check on them. You remember their birthday. But when you stop making the effort, the friendship disappears. That realization can hurt. Your instinct may be to chase the friendship again. But perhaps you need to observe what happens when you stop carrying the entire relationship yourself. Let them show you how much effort they're willing to make. Then let me decide whether this relationship still deserves the same amount of my energy. This isn't about keeping score. Healthy relationships aren't perfectly 50-50 every day. Sometimes your friend needs you more. Sometimes you need them more. The important thing is the pattern. Is there mutual care, mutual respect, mutual effort? Or are you constantly trying to earn a place in someone's life? Now, let's talk about rejection. Rejection can feel deeply personal. Someone doesn't choose you, and your brain quickly translates that into, I'm not good enough. But those two statements aren't the same. Someone can reject you without your value decreasing. You aren't right for every job, every friendship, every romantic relationship. And not everyone will be right for you either. Sometimes rejection is simply a mismatch. The problem begins when you make another person's choice responsible for your self-worth. They don't want me, therefore I'm unattractive. They didn't invite me, therefore I'm unimportant. They criticized me, therefore I'm not talented. But their decision and your identity are two different things. Let them have their opinion. Then ask, let me decide what I believe about myself. This is especially important today because social media exposes us to enormous amounts of judgment, and hundreds of strangers can respond. Some will agree, some won't. If your goal is to make everyone approve of you, you've chosen an impossible job. There will always be someone who misunderstands you, someone who dislikes what you create, someone who thinks you should live differently. Let them. But remember, let them isn't permission to ignore every criticism. Sometimes criticism is useful. If several people you trust tell you that your behavior is hurting others, listen, reflect. Maybe you need to change. The goal isn't to become someone who says, I don't care what anybody thinks. The healthier goal is, I care about the right opinions. And perhaps this is one of the greatest forms of emotional freedom. You stop auditioning for everyone. You stop trying to be chosen by people who aren't choosing you. You stop exhausting yourself trying to manage every opinion. Instead, you pay attention to what people show you. You communicate when communication is needed. You create boundaries when boundaries are needed. And then you bring your attention back to the life you actually control. Because every hour you spend obsessing over someone else's opinion is an hour you're not investing in your own future. And that brings us to the final chapter. Chapter number 5. Take your power back and focus on your own life. At some point, you have to ask yourself a difficult question. How much of my life am I spending thinking about other people? What they think about me? Why they didn't reply? Why they didn't invite me? Whether they approve of my choices? Whether they're disappointed? Whether they're jealous? Whether they understand me? Whether they're going to stay? And while you're thinking about all of that, something important is happening. Your own life is passing. This is where the ideas of let them and let me come together. Let them make their choices, and let me return to mine. Imagine you've spent 3 days thinking about someone who criticized you. You replay their words while driving, while eating, before sleeping. Maybe that person made one comment that lasted 10 seconds, but you've given it hours of your attention. Who is controlling whom? This is why protecting your attention matters. Your attention is one of your most valuable resources. You can invest it in learning, your health, your career, people who love you, your English, your dreams. Or you can spend it trying to manage things you cannot control. The let them idea invites you to recognize that difference. But there is an important warning. Let them doesn't mean tolerating everything. If someone repeatedly disrespects you, you don't have to stay. If someone crosses your boundaries, you can respond. If there's a serious problem in a relationship, you can communicate. Acceptance isn't the same as permission. You can accept that someone behaves a certain way while deciding that you don't want that behavior in your life. That's where let me becomes powerful. Let them speak disrespectfully. Let me leave the conversation. Let them repeatedly cancel plans. Let me stop organizing my life around them. Let them disagree with my dream. Let me continue working toward it. Let them choose another person. Let me stop begging to be chosen. You're not controlling them. You're choosing yourself. And perhaps one of the greatest benefits of this mindset is the energy you recover. Think about everything you could do with the energy you currently spend overthinking other people's behavior. You could exercise, read, build something, learn a skill, call someone who actually cares about you, work toward a goal you've been delaying, or simply enjoy your day. There's also a deeper lesson here about responsibility. It's easy to say, they ruined my mood. Sometimes people genuinely hurt us, but after the initial moment, we still have choices about how we respond. That doesn't mean pretending pain doesn't exist. You can be disappointed. You can be angry. You can grieve a relationship. You can miss someone. The goal isn't to become emotionless. The goal is to stop allowing someone else's choices to become the permanent director of your life. And maybe that's what taking your power back actually means. Not controlling everything, not becoming untouchable, not making everyone respect you, but understanding the boundary between what belongs to them and what belongs to you. Their opinion, theirs. Their choice, theirs. Their reaction, theirs. Your response, yours. Your boundaries, yours. Your next decision, yours. Your future, that's where your attention belongs. So the next time someone doesn't invite you, doesn't understand you, doesn't support you, or chooses a different path, remember those 2 phrases. First, let them. Then ask the more important question. Let me what? Let me communicate. Let me walk away. Let me improve. Let me stop chasing. Let me focus on my goals. Let me enjoy my life. That's where the real power is. Thank you so much for learning with me today. I hope you've improved your English, but I also hope you leave this episode thinking differently about where you spend your emotional energy. You don't need to control everyone around you to create a peaceful life. Sometimes, you need to allow people to reveal who they are, and then decide who you want to be. Let them live their life, and let me live mine.